I educated myself, but then I was like, I need to educate my customers because I was getting a lot of comments like, well, if I knit a whole sweater, am I going to felt it?
Hello everyone, welcome to the next episode of Thinking Through Making. On the podcast today we have Lindsay Parry, aka Hello Stella Fibres. Lindsay is a yarn dyer based in Canada, and she is also planting a dye garden and is currently converting her dyeing practice to natural dyes. So she talks to us today about all sorts of things: creativity, dyeing, gardening, inspiration. So hope you enjoy this episode. Here we go. Hi Lindsay, welcome to Thinking Through Making. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Do you want to just start off by telling us a bit about yourself, how you got started with knitting, how you got started with dyeing, and all that good stuff?
So my name is Lindsay. I am the dyer behind Hello Stella Fibres. I started knitting, 14 years ago. I met my husband, and for one of our anniversaries, I thought it would be really cute to knit him a scarf. Mm-hmm. Did not look like a scarf. It's a very humbling experience, but it ignited something, and I fell in love with knitting. I crochet, and Hello Stella wasn't always yarn dyeing. It's changed a lot. I used to do embroidery, so it started as an embroidery business, and then I started selling my hats and things that I was knitting, which just seems crazy to think back on. And then was pregnant with my first son. I was on mat leave, and I had that moment where I was like, do I go back to working my day job, or do I stay home and try and figure out what I'm going to do? And I had this pipe dream of dyeing yarn and selling my yarn. And with my husband's encouragement, I just took a leap. And that's what I've been doing for 7 years.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it worked out.
Yeah, it worked out well. So we've roughly been dyeing about the same amount of time, I would say, ish.
My son was 1, just over, I started in June of 2017.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, I think that was around 2017 or something as well. I can't quite remember now. Yeah. And how did you learn to dye? Did you just start experimenting? Were you just
full experimenting, seeing what stuck, literally? Yeah. It was a lot of trial and error and kind of figuring out there's been moments in my dyeing career where I've tried to really hone in on what it is that I like, but every now and then you kind of get persuaded by trends, or you see what other dyers are doing and you see them having great success. So you're like, well, that's working for them, so maybe it'll work for me too. And then I was miserable. So I was like, I just need to stay true to what I like, and that will come, it'll speak through my work.
Yeah, I used to have this art tutor, and he would always say, make what you find interesting because other people will find it interesting too. So that was always a ticket for me to just do what you want and see what happens.
And I think that's the whole point of art. You're expressing yourself, and you're doing it so nobody else can really do. For you, everybody that's coming to you is coming to you because they're like, well, Emma dyed this, I want it. It's not anything that anybody else could do but you. So I always try to remind myself, even with acid dyes, I'm I see similar colors, but at the end of the day, I'm like, well, they probably used a different recipe to achieve that color. Mm-hmm. I know people know it's me that's doing it, so they're going to come to me because they want what I've created, or I hope that they want what I've created.
Yeah. yeah, your dyeing practice has definitely like evolved over the last, like I would say, well, ever since I started following you, it's changed incrementally. So like tell us a bit about that.
Yeah. I think when I first started, the only thing that, like, the only, what's the word I'm looking for? The exposure that I'd had for natural dyeing was um, the acid dyes, speckling was like huge, and like variegated yarn and like fun yarn. And people were primarily using this stuff to knit like fun socks. And I was like, ooh, this is cool. This is exciting. Like you just basically sprinkle a bunch of dye on yarn. Like seems like it would be a lot of fun. And it was. But then I started to realize that I was like, I like it, but I started dyeing tonals and semi-solids.
Hmm.
And that's like, oh, I love this because you could really manipulate the colors because you could over dye things or you could glaze things or like start with a yellow. And then once all the color was soaked up, you could add your next color and put the yarn back in and it would change. And I was like, this is so cool. Like you started layering.
Yeah.
Um, and then when I switched, then I started to learn more. I think the color theory part came first with yarn. And then I started to really do my research on wool and yarn and what was most beneficial. And I was like, I need to not, I don't want to carry superwash yarn anymore because it started with superwash. And I would knit like a sweater and it would look great. And then I would block it and it would like expand and grow and it would just keep growing and growing and growing because there's nothing holding it together.
Yeah.
Once I started really learning about wool itself, then I switched my bases, which
Hmm.
was a really scary thing to go through because people love superwash wool.
Mm. Do they? Because this is the interesting thing because I've never stocked it, so I don't know like what. Um, yeah, it was never really my thing, so I never stocked it. But like, yeah. So do you think it's more popular than non-superwash?
I
Do you
think
think it's
so. When I switched from superwash to non-superwash, I educated myself, but then I was like, I need to educate my customers because I was getting a lot of comments like, well, if I knit a whole sweater, am I going to felt it? Like, because
okay?
I think I think the superwash thing was more of an American, like a North American thing. I think over in Europe, wool is still just wool. Like it's not. Um, and so I think because I think superwash is a North American thing primarily. People were like, well, I just want the ease of being able to throw my finished objects into the washing machine.
Mm,
Even though, like, I would never recommend, even if you're knitting with superwash, like, just it's doesn't take as long as you think to hand wash something. And if you do it in like a bulk situation where you're like, I've like taken all of my socks and I'm like, I'm going to wash all my socks in one go in the bathtub. And I just have like 15 pairs of socks and then I just lay them all out to dry. Like it's not
yeah.
that, um, but I felt like I was educating my customers through my excitement of what I learned about wool. And then more and more, they were like, oh, wow, like it's not, non-superwash isn't as scary as I thought it was. And I think there's a bit of a misconception about non-superwash wool and that you have to be really delicate or it's going to felt. Whereas I feel like it's kind of the opposite. You don't need to be so delicate with it because it's like more of a workhorse wool in its natural state.
Yeah,
You think about
yeah, definitely it is like you don't have to be definitely I'm not delicate with it at all. Like I am horribly rough with my clothes.
I'm so hard on my clothes and like I think I wear this sweater like 3 times a week maybe. I live in this and it's fine. And I'm not gentle. Like I'll take it off and I like throw it across. Like I am so hard on my clothing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that I suppose the only part you have to be mindful of is like when if you decide to wash them, which I
admittedly do not do very much.
Well,
Just the socks, that's really it. And my daughter's like sweaters, like 'cause she's quite messy, but I I do wash those quite a lot. But that my own sweaters, like I don't really wash them very much.
no, and that was one of the things that I read about untreated wool is that it has neutralizing properties. So if you are like, if you're concerned about body odor and stuff like that, like it almost like traps the odor and then it neutralizes. I'm like, wool has so many great properties to it that should be celebrated. Like people use wool now, for example, to insulate houses.
Yeah.
We're going artificial insulation or fiberglass and using wool and like shoving wool into walls. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, this is crazy. And it's hypoallergenic. So once I started learning and then started educating, my customers started becoming more excited about it. And I know I've received messages from people being like, I used to only knit with superwash wool and now I knit with like untreated wool exclusively because it's amazing.
Yeah, that's
So
cool. So you had
yeah,
quite a big journey to actually learning yourself, being able to teach your customers like and about wool and everything. I suppose I never really had to do that because like I from the start I was like only I don't think I ever did any really big changes like that. So yeah, I can see why that would be quite a scary change.
it was and it was like I think so 2020 happened and like that first period of lockdown was absolute insanity for my business because I felt people were home, nobody was doing it. So everyone's like, I'm gonna learn a new hobby.
Yep.
And I I think back to like that period of time and the amount like I was pumping out yarn like crazy to the point where I was like, what am I doing? Because I was like, it was great because it was my husband wasn't working, he couldn't work through the pandemic. Um, but that's when I really stopped to be like, I think I need to figure out what it is that I actually want to like what purpose do I want my business to achieve? And I wanted to be more intentional. So then as I started learning, I was like, I think I need to make this change because it feels more authentic to me. And then hopefully people will want it. So I think it was like fall of 2020, I was like, surprise, not caring super much anymore. And it's been great ever since. But now I'm like going through this other big
Yeah.
change, which is like, I've been through it once before. So I'm like, oh gosh, this is so scary. But I think it'll be good. I hope
Yeah.
it'll be good.
So tell me a little bit about your decision to switch from acid dyes. Now, I don't know like what your plan is. Like, I don't know if you plan on doing a bit of both or like exclusively natural dyes or like how you're going to find that transition. So just tell us a bit about that.
I think I'm still figuring it out. I think this year will be like a transitional year. So there will still be a little bit of acid dyeing. But by the end of this year, I hope to just be fully switched over.
Mhm.
Um, I like the acid dyes and it's treated me well for the past 7 years, but I think my like I love gardening. And so being excited about my gardening and now that it's growing season, I'm like, I really want that too. Last year I was like, everything that I did was inspired by gardening and nature. And I was like, I feel like I need to take this one step further and be able to like actually blend the two together. And then I don't know, like for my kids, I'm like, I'm getting excited and being able to teach them a little bit more about it because they know that I dye yarn. They're like, oh, mom, your yarn is everywhere. Um, and they like coming down to my studio and seeing what I'm doing. But if I can kind of incorporate them a little bit more into like helping me harvest flowers or
Mhm.
planting, like planting seeds. Yesterday, my son was helping me write out the tags for my dye garden. So And it just feels more intentional. And I've always wanted my everything that I do for my business to be intentional and to feel intentional.
Yeah. Hmm. So yeah, and you've just planted your dye garden. So what have you planted? Like, how's it going? What does it look like? What stage are we at?
We're in the very early stages. I have two different types of marigolds planted in the backyard, which are also like they're all over the place because I'm also using them for pest control,
Mhm.
like deter pests and stuff like that from the veggies. But for seedlings, I started myself indigo, woad, dyer's chamomile, and calendula. My seedlings do not look as good as yours. So we'll see how it goes. But I did just plant them out into the garden beds yesterday. Um, and they perked up. They were looking a little sad and leggy. And I went out this morning and they were looking pretty, they were looking a little bit perkier. So I'm hoping that that's a good sign.
Yeah.
But then I also learned like you can dye from dahlias.
Mhm.
So, and I plant dahlias every year. I've just always planted them for their like for flowers to like enjoy in the house or in the garden. And I planted two different types of black-eyed Susans. So Rudbeckia. Um, and then, I've got a rhubarb.
Oh,
Apparently, you can
okay,
use
yeah.
the leaf of rhubarb. So like the actual plant itself, I think it's the stem part is where you can get the dye to like dye wool. But the leaf is, he said you can use a leaf and throw it. I watched another YouTube documentary where you can rhubarb and put it in the pot and it's a natural mordant.
Yeah, it has oxalic acid in it, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I've actually never used it, but yeah, I hear you can use it. So
So
interested to know how that goes. Well, oh, there's someone knocking at the door. I'm going to ignore them. Um, do you want to hear what I planted?
do because your gardens are much more. I love your gardens so much.
Well,
You've got more gardens.
my dye garden's very new, like it's just this year. So I planted quite similar to you actually. So I planted Japanese indigo. I don't know what type you planted. I planted the Persicaria tinctoria because I thought it would work better with our climate here. Because I don't know that the climate here is that super different to Japan. I'm not sure. It might be hotter there. Not sure. I also planted woad. I don't know what variety. I planted Dyer's chamomile. Did you say you planted that? Yeah.
Well, it's still in the trays. I think I need to get another. I have big whiskey barrels in the backyard, which is what I started out with, and then this year I added more raised beds. But I think I need to get another barrel for the chamomile,
Yeah.
which is a good excuse to get more planting space.
Yeah. I planted a bed of dahlias as well. Um, they're kind of hard here because it's so wet. I
Yeah.
don't know how wet it is with you, but like it rains most days here. So like you have to lift them and everything, lift them, store them, and then you have to like start them off in the greenhouse and then bring them out. Like they're a bit of a, so it's the
You
first
don't.
time I've tried to do more than like a handful.
Yeah. Usually I try and keep it pretty small, but I've planted a 6 foot bed of them and a barrel. But
Okay.
the same, we have to pull them at the end of the season. I don't pre-start them. I just plant them out once I see a viable eye.
Okay.
But I do need to pull them and
Yeah.
store them,
Yeah.
which I've been successful with. They always say to like store them with like a sawdust or vermiculite or something dry.
Mhm.
Um, and it's never worked for me. I like put them in the basement, like deep under the stairs where it's cold and dark, and I always have to buy new ones.
Okay. And then, as well as that, I have some bronze fennel, which I think you can dye with. I haven't tried. but obviously you can eat it as well. Then I'm just looking out the window to see what's here. I think you can dye with Achillea, which I haven't tried. I'm going to have loads of Achillea. And I have a rosemary bush. Haven't dyed with that before, but it's not really big enough. It's quite a big bush, but it's not like big enough to like fill a dye pot. So there's no point in taking anything off it yet. And there was something else. Well, I actually planted a little patch of flax seeds.
Okay.
I'm not going to do anything with them. I just kind of want to see what they do and like what they look like. But like eventually it would be kind of cool to like some year to have enough to like do the whole process with and like see what happens or like how that whole thing works. Because sure, you know, like there's like a huge history with Irish linen and stuff here around like where I live. So I would kind of like to explore that at some point in the future, but I think it self seeds, so I'm not sure actually, maybe it doesn't. But I kind of wanted that just for a little nod to that history, not for any specific
Cool.
purpose.
Is your for your zone, I guess, are your like Japanese indigo and your woad treated as annuals, or would they be perennials? Like they'll stay now that you've planted them?
Well,
Will you have them?
indigo, I think, is an annual, but you can take a few cuttings off it. And then the woad is a biannual, I think, so it comes every other year. Um, but I have quite a lot of Rudbeckia too. You were saying about Rudbeckia, and there's one more thing. Oh, Coreopsis.
I have Coreopsis seeds. I just don't know where. I'm running out of space.
Me too. I need like a feed.
Like I added 4 6-foot garden, like raised garden beds to the backyard this year, and they're already full. And I'm like, how did I thought it was like, this is gonna be plenty.
Yeah.
And it's already full.
They always fill up. Like when they're seeds, you never think like they're going to take up so much space, and suddenly you're like, oh, I sowed a bit too much.
I want to do I still want to sprinkle some cosmos seeds too,
Oh,
because
I seen you put up and said one of them self-seeded. That would never happen here.
they're treated as annuals here.
Okay.
Like, and so I was like doing some weeding last night in the garden, and I was like, I have like an app on my phone for identifying plants. And I was like, this looks like cosmos, but there's no way because I haven't put any seeds out yet. But I planted it along a border last year, and it's popping up like all over the place.
Wow.
So I was like,
Oh, that's amazing.
so I
That's
have to remember, I'm like, don't pull, this is not a weed. This is a flower. You're not going to pull this.
I think you can dye with cosmos as well, can't you? I haven't tried that either, but I would love to try like eco printing with all the flowers. Like I really want to try that.
That's part of the courses has like a little section on that as well, because they're teaching in the course that I'm taking, they do yarn, but they also do like linen and like cotton, like a whole bunch of different textiles.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah. Because yeah, it's slightly different processes for both of those, like in natural dyeing, isn't it? So yeah, that's pretty cool. So I'm so excited to see how your dye garden goes and we can compare notes like
I hope that it becomes something. It's like right now it looks so sad and pathetic. I'm hoping that everything is happy and it all becomes something at the end of the season. It's all a whole learning process, but I'm lucky that in my area, we live in a city, but there's a lot of gardeners in my neighborhood.
was
And
there?
so some gardeners have come to me and said, like, if you need gardening space, you know, I'm happy to entertain some of your plants or seedlings, or if you want to, like one of them, she works in textiles. So she's like, if you want to plant some of your dye plants, I can add them to my garden and you can harvest when you want. And I was like, That's so nice of you.
Really nice. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's cool. Gardeners are quite generous people, I find.
I love them.
Yeah. I have a friend who's a gardener and you can't see it here, but I've put these big bamboo canes up. Like he gave me a huge thing of bamboo from his garden and I've used it like literally all over my garden. And then I was like, I want to put some in my studio as like, because like in Asia in different, like Japan, I think particularly they use bamboo in their indigo dye. So I was like, oh, I really want to have like, that's like just a little nod to that tradition. And I think that really filled up my cup a little bit.
And it like I love the look of it too. Like it,
Yeah,
I love it. So
it's bringing me a lot of joy, a lot of color joy.
yeah, it's little things.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? I was wanting to ask you as well because I feel like you've got a very unusual color sense, I would say. Like you put colors together that other people would not dream of putting together, and then you do it and it like looks really good. So
Oh,
like
thank you.
and I think this is reflected in your style as well. And also, you have a background in photography, don't you? Okay, because my background's in photography. So I would like to hear do you think photography has influenced your fashion style, your colors, like going down, like, I don't know if you were in a dark room, if you were like, what's the kind of,
Yeah. So when I was in high school, I took every art program that I could. I knew from very early on that I was going to do something creative. And then when I went to post sec. So when I was in high school, everything was dark room. It was all film. Like you would take a roll of film and then you'd put your arms into like that black bag and do all the stuff and then go into the dark room and process everything. When I went to college, I first did traditional art. So I was drawing, painting, sculpting. And then when that program was done, I went into photography. So there's a lot of color theory from like, I would say, well, elementary school, but high school all the way through my college career. Color theory was taught in like everything, and especially in photography, like they go really deep into color theory. And
tell me
in
some of
college,
that. I don't feel like I learned any of that. So
oh,
like, what did you teach?
well, for my photography program, it was 2 years and it was like now it's a 4 year program. Like they extended it to a 4 year program, but they took the 2 year program and just stretched it out. So in that 2 years, it was like a heavy course load. And we had um, teachers that were teaching us. I had like a computer teacher who taught me all the like programs and how to connect your camera to your computer and to I'm drawing a blank on it now, but it's where you use the little device thingy to calibrate. There you go, calibrate your computer screen. And I've forgotten about all of that. Um, we had like a Photoshop teacher, and then we had the teacher that was teaching us like the color theory and focal style. Like all, I've forgotten everything, but the color theory stuck. I've always been fascinated by color. Um, and so I try and like push the envelope. I also look a lot at my garden is like a good one because you see like sometimes you see different color pairings in gardens and you're like,
Yeah.
those colors did not work together, but they do. And it's beautiful and it looks beautiful. And yeah, I don't know. I like to push the boundaries a little bit with color pairings. And I think sometimes it doesn't always work because I'll cast something on. I'll be like really excited about these colors. And then I'm like, they look great in a specific way, but in this way, they don't always work together. But yeah, color theory is really interesting. And there's a book, I don't have it up here, but there's a book that I found. And I found it through somebody I like to watch. Sorry, I like to watch like style influencers, like people who like show like them getting ready, but I guess like almost borderline maximalist outfits where they're putting together like patterns and textures and like really out there things. But this girl posted this book, and I think it's a Japanese book, but it's color combinations.
Oh.
And it's just squares. But every day, like she just picks this like a page every day, and she's like, I'm gonna put an outfit together based on these colors. And she's like, this does not look like it would go. But then the second she pulls an outfit, it works. So I got that book because I was just fast. I was like, I want to see what different colors are being paired with what. And they have like, there's a section with like 2 colors, 3 colors, 4 colors, and then maybe there's a 5 color one, so you can see. And it's just really fascinating to see. And then colors like really exciting to me. But like when you pick a color and then you start to pick out like little nuances of that color, if you add warmth to it, it goes like one direction. If you add a cool tone to it, it goes in a different direction. And seeing how it plays in different lighting too. Like sometimes when I take pictures of yarn, I'm like, look at it in indirect light and then look at it in direct light. Like it looks so different. Like there's so many things that play into a color and how it changes and manipulates.
Mm-hmm. The only color theory I remember is complementary opposites. But I do remember I probably learned no color theory on my photography
Oh,
course at all. It was not a practical course. It was like about using photography to like explore an idea. So
yeah.
it's like a fine art course really, with a side of maybe a few practical lessons in how to use like calibrating your screen, like you said, or like how to scan in film or like something like that.
We had, well, we had Photoshop too. So, on that side of it, if you were going in and like color correcting something, or fixing it and you'd have to match colors, you could kind of like break down the color that you were trying to match.
Mm-hmm.
But we did like, yeah, we had lessons where we had to do stuff specifically outside using natural light, and then we had to do stuff like in studio. And every now and then there would be like a company that would partner with the school program. Like we had a brewery that was like, we want your class to take this beer bottle and create like an ad in studio. So then we're like spraying it with like glycerin to make it look like it's sweating. This is but yeah, like they had one teacher, I think Mr. White was his name, and he was the one that taught color theory. And I was very excited about it, which I guess was good because it stuck.
Now, my main color theory was in school. We had an art teacher who was brilliant and he taught us how to paint. And I remember like he taught a bit of color theory then. And then we went to paint something. And like I remember like painting this like a face with him. And I always said like, oh, to get like the correct color of the face, you need to paint like you need to like put a bit of blue like in what you think would be a face color so that it like cools it down. Like just like thinking about colors in that way, like subtle changes, I think definitely play a part in my dyeing too, and yours obviously as well. So it's interesting how that kind of we both had that experience, and now we're both dyers.
Yeah.
Dyers of yarn. It's quite funny, isn't it?
I just recently, like, I'm always trying to learn something new or whatever, but there was a painter and she shared to make a cohesive palette. If you're using a bunch of colors that you're like, these don't look like they would go together. And this would, I guess, more relate to dyeing, but you would take one specific color. So say it's like a golden yellow, and you mix that in with your blue, your green, your red, orange, purple, and you make sure that you add the same amount, and it turns like it would tint all of those colors with the, but it makes it cohesive. And she's like, these colors should not work together in a painting or if you're dyeing. But the second you add the golden yellow to all of these colors, for example, it makes it cohesive and it works. And it could very well translate to dyeing yarn as well. Like if you want to make a cohesive palette, include like a little pinch of one color with every color you dye, and it puts it all in like the same color family almost.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I can see. Now I'm going to try something. I don't know what I'm going to try, but I'm going to try an experiment someday and see like if that works. I think it will
I
work.
love
Sounds right.
experimenting is like probably my most favorite part. Like I'll
Yeah,
just give myself a little bit of creative time in the studio. I'm like, I'm just gonna play around and see what happens.
yeah. So you were talking a bit about experimentation there, and I know I sometimes find it difficult to know like when to do that. So I was wondering, could you kind of take us through your day to day?
Yeah.
Do you
It's
spend time experimenting? Like how much time do you spend dyeing and doing admin? Or like, what's your day to day just look like? Yeah, just tell us about that.
um I would like to say that I have it all figured out. And I have but every day is very different. Um I try to at least get a little bit of dyeing in every day. It doesn't always happen. Um, and if I feel, usually I don't give myself enough creative time, is how I personally feel. But if I'm feeling, this year, like the first quarter of this year, I tried doing what I've seen other dyers do, where I'm doing more of like a pre-order route where I give myself the creative time to come up with recipes and create the colors. And then one of the hardest things for me is I'll dye a color. Historically, I've dyed colors, and the reception has been so positive online about it. But then when I put it up for sale, I'm stuck with like 20 skeins of yarn that are just sitting there. And I'm like, what happened? I thought people were excited. So this year I switched to pre-order, and it's been fine. I don't love it because then I get into this like I have to dye all these colors on repeat, and it takes that creative time out, which
Mhm.
is kind of what I'm most excited about with natural dyes is I can just get back to creating and just kind of going with the flow and creating I guess maybe like more authentically for me. But my day to day, it's a lot of I probably spend maybe 3 hours dyeing, and then the rest of my day is spent doing like emails, shipping, labeling, all of the like other not so fun stuff. I'd rather be dyeing yarn or in my garden. But
Yeah.
yeah, it
Mhm.
changes. And then sometimes like I have to like if my kids are homesick from school, then I have to
Yeah.
like run downstairs and get something started and then go back upstairs and then run back downstairs and get something started and then run back upstairs. It's yeah.
Yeah, that's
Some
tricky.
days, some days are more productive than other days, or I feel like I got more done, even though I got stuff done. It just depends on the day.
Yeah. I struggle a little bit with the productivity thing because like in my head I feel like I should be productive. But then sometimes when I'm most productive is when I'm not doing very much, or it seems like I'm not doing very much, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. It's it's hard. Like I don't know. I feel like now that everything is trained, like weather is changing to, I don't necessarily want to also be in the basement. So I find that I'm like taking specific things that I can work on and I'm bringing them upstairs to like our dining room table so that I
Yeah,
can work natural. I don't have any natural light in the basement, which is
that's
probably like my big pet peeve. But
yeah.
I have a lot of space, so
Mm.
before I this used to actually be my my dye studio is our master bedroom, but this is now my husband's office. Uh, but it was nice because it's like the nicest light in the house, which I really miss.
Yeah, that's a nice thing about being out here. Like before, I was working in what would have been our master bedroom and ensuite, and I found there was windows in there, but like they were quite small, and I just felt constrained a little bit. Um, but yeah, it's funny about the creative process. Like I think you are really affected by your surroundings, like you were saying, how you're really influenced by like the garden and stuff. Like I feel like that too. And that definitely, but it's not just like I'm influenced, oh, there's a tree, I want to make something green. It's more like I'm walking around in the garden and at the back of my mind, there's all these ideas that are starting to like ruminate and like starting to come out of doing this little walk around the garden that you do every day, noticing things and just like, it's like allowing your brain time to like, I don't know, like space to think.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like, well, you're even, I like my one son and I, we like to go for walks around the neighborhood. And just even doing that, I'm noticing like, specific things are in bloom now. And that's colors that only come out in the springtime. So maybe last spring I didn't even see it because I wasn't doing these walks with my son. And I'm like, the color is incredible and the textures are incredible and how everything like works together. And it does, like, you just kind of start coming up with these ideas and you're like, can't wait to like experiment with this idea or see where it goes. Sometimes it doesn't ever become anything, but I think it's important to have that time.
Yeah, I think it's really important too. Yeah, especially if you want to come up with something that's exciting for you and like fresh ideas and stuff. Yeah, you definitely need time for your mind to like wander a little bit, I think. Because if you're just producing all the time, you just kind of, I don't know, I feel like I just don't produce anything that's very good.
Yeah. Yep.
But there's not a lot of weight given to that doing nothing or like that. Even though like I have this book by Mason Curry, you probably know it. It's like it's called Daily Rituals and he chronicles, it's kind of what inspired this series, to be honest. Um he kind of chronicles the lives of all these different like people who've like done all these amazing things, all these like artists and inventors and stuff, like what their daily life looked like. And almost all of them at some point in the day spend a huge chunk of time not really doing anything. A lot of them are on drugs and alcohol as well. But like a lot of them go for walks every day, or like they take the whole afternoon off and go for a walk, or like they take really long holidays and like they do all this stuff that kind of looks as if they're not working hard. But then there's something about that time that then they're able to like become like a part of the
They're
idea.
filling up their, yeah, I don't know. It's maybe you also struggle with this, but I always struggle with social media because people are only seeing like a tiny fraction of what is going on in a day. Um, I start to feel guilty if I'm out in the garden and I post that I'm out in the garden, then I'm immediately like, oh my gosh, like they're probably thinking I'm doing nothing. Like I should be in the basement, like slaving away and working or whatever. And then I get in my own head about it and I'm like, but they haven't seen every little part of my day that led up to me having this time in the garden. Or if I'm like sitting and knitting, like I not recently, but a couple months ago, like before picking up our kids from school, I would give myself like 30, 40 minutes before pickup time to just sit and knit a few rows on something, or even just like have a cup of tea and watch like YouTube or whatever, just to sit before the kids come home and chaos ensues. And then I started feeling weird about sharing like me knitting midday. I was like, oh my gosh, they're going to think that I'm not doing anything or I'm not working or fulfilling any of their orders. What service?
Thank you. Um, yeah, I totally agree with you. And also within myself, I feel guilty about doing that, but why should I? Because all the best people who were really good at doing all sorts of things, they all did that. Only they didn't have social media back then. There's usually people that are like dead in the book, mostly, not all of them, but like, so they had no one apart from their immediate neighborhood watching them do stuff. And I think actually social media is, um, yeah, it kind of puts pressure on us to share what we're doing, which kind of ruins the creative process in a way. And also, like when you think about what you should be doing for other people, I think that kind of ruins the creative process as well.
It's been probably like the biggest struggle in the past year is like finding that balance of what do I share? What do I not share? If I share this, people are going to have opinions. Do I want to welcome those opinions?
Mm.
They could be good opinions, but they could also be like negative opinions. And it's always like the one negative opinion
Yeah,
that like, yeah, it's been a struggle. I have a very love-hate relationship with social media.
me too.
If I didn't need to rely on social media for my business, I don't think I would have much of a relationship with social media.
Yeah, me too. And you know what? Like, I have even, this is so crazy. I have even in the past considered starting an actual mailing list, not like with emails, like with like letters that you send out. So like if the internet like breaks down, so my plan, this is my plan. I'm going to send out like a letter to everyone saying what colors I'm going to be dyeing that month, and they have to write back on the letter like how many of each they want. And then once I've made it, I'll ship it out.
I love that. You know what? Yeah, I struggle with social media, especially lately. I feel like people are like, I want to see what you're doing and I want to see what you're knitting. And I'm like, okay. And then I share it and then I feel guilty because I'm like, it looks like I'm not working
Mm.
and I should be working. Like I have that, it's like a constant, but I know that that's like I don't know. I don't know if that's a pressure I'm just putting on myself because of the fear of that's what somebody is going to think. And then I get in my own head about it or what. But I've had people say stuff in the past, like I'll share I'm knitting something and they're like, did you ship out my order? Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. I mean, probably most people aren't thinking that. I mean, if I wasn't self-employed, I think that for me is the thing that makes me feel like I should always do more. Whereas if I was in a job, I would just walk out and be like, okay, I'm getting paid at the end of the day. I have
No.
annual leave, I have sick pay, I have maternity pay. Um, but that's not really what I would want, I think, as well. So there, even if you did that, you'd still be unfulfilled. So I think there's something for me. It's definitely worth it to scratch that creative itch of like creating your own.
Absolutely.
But yeah, like I've definitely thought about like hiring someone just to do my social media. But then I'm like, well, how can I do that? Like no one else knows these colors but me. No one else knows. Yeah, if someone asks me a question about a color, like no one else in the world can answer that question apart from me. So like there's no way I can get someone else to ever do that. So you're
I
kind of
know.
stuck with it. But I mean, maybe if there's like an apocalypse, I'll like send out my little mailers and people can mail me back and they would have like analog yarn.
It's like I don't know if it's the same where you are, but in the spring and then in the fall, I get like a seed catalog where I
Yeah.
can fill out what seeds I want, and then I send it through with like you can either do like a check or they'll bill you for it or whatever. But yeah, I mean it's still works for some companies. So
I don't know if it would actually work for me. It could be a kind of cool like little experiment to do, like to see like what people
I
think. We're just like,
of like like I know that you have your newsletter and I have a newsletter, which I'm like I only ever send out newsletters when there's like an announcement or like an update or something. But I like the idea of like snail mail
yeah,
and like a postcard and
yeah.
like I don't know, once a month, and it could have like a picture of something that you've worked on in the past month, and then on the back like little blurb about what's been going on. Like I like the idea of that.
Yeah. Because like I used to get loads of paper mail like through my letterbox. And then obviously everything kind of moved away from that. So now the only thing you get in is like bills or like something like that. But there's like a couple of companies that I really like that I've signed up to get in it by post instead of email. And I love it when they come through because I'm really interested in what they have to show me. And it's always, they have always it presented so nicely. Like one of them is like a magazine, like I think it comes out every quarter, and it's just like kind of like a little pamphlet, and they tell you it's a for a bookshop, and they like have people in to like write about different themes. They have excerpts from like books and like I love that. And then there's another like clothes company that produced this lovely like it's kind of like a brochure, but like it's all folded up nicely, and then you have to like unfold it, and it's like a big poster, and they have pictures of like their beautiful like clothes and like a wee bit of writing and maybe like an interview with an artist or something. Like I really appreciate getting that, but I wouldn't appreciate it from everybody.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. I don't we just get bills.
Yeah.
We get bills. Like,
Um,
oh, that time of month again. Okay.
oh yeah. um, could you show us any of your current works in progress?
I don't have much. I am switching my yarn bases to domestic, like Canadian wool. I found a bunch of farms and I'm working with them. So last night I started a sock. It's not very much right now, but I'm a very slow sock knitter. But I'm referencing your one journal entry, what you did on no nylon sock knitting. And this is like a real experiment because I don't know why, but here in Canada, most of the domestics like fingering weight yarn is single ply.
Okay. Hmm.
So I was talking with one of the small farms that I've used, and that's where this wool is from. And they said that one of their favorite things to use it for is socks. And I was like, that's really interesting because it's single ply, and like they're getting like socks are they get put through the ringer, like especially if you're wearing them in like shoes or boots or whatever. So I'm gonna see what happens. I'm fully prepared to knit this sock and then have it like disintegrate, maybe. Who knows? But
That's
um,
what I felt.
I'm thinking that that's probably what's gonna like that's what I would like for
Yeah, that would be a good thing.
I would love for that to be the outcome. So I'm planning to knit the sock like um I'm holding it double and I'm using I think a
Hmm.
3 millimeter needle because it's more of a heavy, like it's pretty thick. So we'll see. But I'm gonna try and knit it slightly longer than my foot in hopes that with wear and friction it will like felt and then maybe even kind of mold more to my foot shape. So it's a big experiment. And then I have a friend also testing it single ply, so just one strand with a bit of mohair, and then see what happens. And then I'm crocheting. I'm not really knitting. Not really.
Beautiful vest that you made recently. I think I seen your beautiful vest you made recently. It was like granny squares. I love that. That's so cool.
Old. I think I started that 2 years ago, 2 summers ago. And I just literally needed to finish the border or like the collar. And it took me an hour maybe, and then it was done. And I was like, I could have been wearing this whole time. So, but yeah, I love crocheting. And then it's fun because it like,
oh, nice colors. The colors.
You can play with the colors, and I'm like, oh, I really like that. And then there's some squares that I've made because my kids are helping me with it. There's some squares where I'm like, color scheme, but yeah, it's fun. They come up with everything. Like they picked this one.
I like that one. That's cool.
So, and they have fun with it. They ask every day, can I pick up 4 colors? I'm like, yep. So we're making a blanket together.
That's really cool. I love that. I actually have your advent calendar yard here from last year. You're doing another advent calendar this year, aren't you?
Yeah, it's a bit different though. It's not like 12 days, but it's not 24 days. And I like to tell people that it doesn't need to be considered. I loved that one. That was a fun one to do. But it doesn't need to be like, you don't need to open it one at a time. You could open it like if you're having a bad day and you need to open like a treat, you could treat it that way. You can open it all in one day, like do whatever you want. But it's 18 days, like 18 minis. And then there's like 3 extra curated goods from other small businesses.
And I love your theme. Tell us your theme.
The theme is Amelie from based on the movie, because that movie is just such a treat to watch. It's like visually stunning. It's quirky. The storyline and like what it's about is really beautiful. I really like it. So, and it's interesting because it's a very limited color palette.
Okay.
Like it's reds, greens, like golden yellows, like everything like that. Those are the 3 primary colors of the whole entire film. And it's repeated throughout the film, and it's very like monochromatic in that sense. So I think it's one of the things about the movie that I think really works.
Now I want to watch it again.
No.
Because the theme for this one was Pride and yeah. So before I opened this, I went on and rewatched it all. Like I was like, okay, I think she'll do this color, and then maybe she'll do this color. And it was quite close to what I expected. Actually, I was like, there's definitely going to be a blue. There's going to be different types of pink, I think. But again, like that film has a really like lovely color sense throughout it.
Beautiful. It's shot beautifully. The aesthetic is stunning. The acting is great. Like it really, I don't know. Everything about that movie is just, that's a feel good, if I don't know what I want to watch, or if I'm like feeling sad or down, I'm like, oh, Nick, my husband Nick will be like, you should probably watch Pride and Prejudice.
Love that. And the main color, sometimes I just like look at this one. I just go up and just like look at it for a while.
I was photographing it. I was like, this is not translating. Like there you can see all of the little nuances in the colors, but trying to take a picture, it kept falling flat. And I was like, how do I show all of the little, because that color went through 4 different dye baths. Like
Mhm.
it was 4 different cycles of dyeing. So it was a process, but I'm like, and it's a very delicate color.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah,
very much appreciated that color. I thought that is beautiful. I really like that.
I
So,
still have your advent too. What am I gonna? I started knitting socks with them. That's what I
did
started
you?
doing.
Okay.
I was like looking for my one particular sock needle, and now I remember where it is because it's on those socks.
I have mine sitting down there actually, but I'm undecided what to do with it. But I know what I'm going to do with yours. I think I'm going to knit some for my daughter. Like, Petite Knit has stripy patterns where it's like I think it's the Holger
Is it
jumper.
the with the all the different colored stripe sections?
Yes,
Yes.
and different colored here, and I think that'll be, oh my goodness, so cute. So that's what I'm going to do. And is there anything else you want to tell us about? Anything coming up in your shop, where we can find you? Any parting thoughts?
I I guess just I'm on social media. I'm at underscore hello Stella underscore. Um, Coming up, I'm gonna be starting natural dyeing soon, I hope. I think that's my advent is up in the shop for pre-order already, which just seems crazy. Like it's May. um, yeah, I'm not really on anything else. And basically, I was on YouTube, but there's so many things going on. I
Yeah.
don't know how you do a really good job of doing your YouTube and your social media and all your gardening and everything. But yeah,
Oh, thank you. Well, thanks very much for coming on today. And yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed our chat.
that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and yeah, hopefully you can all tune in next time. Go and follow Lindsay if you aren't already. And um, yeah, that's it.